We can't just be plain consultants anymore. We have to actually enter the operational field and try to support early stage startups. Public debt crises in Greece, then Ireland, then Portugal, Spain, and of course, at the end of the day, you have to, sink or swim, right? You've got to either put on your bathing suit and dive into the water and start trying to invest in that country, or you should not. So if I'm an accountant, I would be thinking right now, wow, in 5 years, within 5 years, the very operating fabric of my sector is going to change. How am I going to respond to that?
Hi, and welcome to Angel Talks, a podcast that provides exclusive insights into the world of angel investing. I am your host, Sona Vezirian, Director at Bana Angels, a pioneering angel investing network with over 5 years of experience in the field. We have 26 startups in our portfolio and prominent angel investors from all over the world. You can learn more about us at bana.am. Here at Angel Talks, we are gathering with distinguished investors who share their experiences, personal stories, tips, and tricks to help you start doing angel investing or become better at it. I am honored to have Philip Ammerman as my guest. Philip brings years of experience in investment consultancy and startup advisory. Philip is a co-founder and managing partner at Navigator Consulting Group, which implemented over 400 projects in 45 countries in 6.5 billion euros invested resources. Philip has 11 startups in his portfolio as an angel investor. In this episode, we will dive into Philip's personal story, how he started angel investing, how he started investing outside of his market, and what angel investors should do to support their startups. So let's start. Hi, Philip. Thank you for being my guest today.
Good evening. It's great to be here.
So let's learn a little more about you. Can you please tell us your background, your education? What have you been doing in earlier your life?
Absolutely. So I studied geology and economics at Princeton University a long time before the World Wide Web existed. I started my professional career working for a German consultancy in the area of mergers and acquisitions, organizational restructuring, and privatization. And I worked on some very interesting projects with the reunification of Germany, the reconstruction of Eastern Europe, investments which were taking place in countries like Lithuania or Ukraine or South Africa. In 1995, I decided to set up my own company. It's called Navigator Consulting. And the year that that I and my partners established the company, also happened to be the year that the Netscape Navigator and the Internet Explorer web browsers were launched, or at least became more popular. And that was kind of the beginning of the Web 1.0 boom. So the initial rise and rapid expansion of the first iteration of the World Wide Web.
Yes, interesting. So, what does your company do, Navigator?
We work primarily in 3 areas. The first is classic investment advisory, acting as a consultant in areas like commercial, technical, and financial due diligence, writing business plans, developing financial models, risk analysis, scenario planning, and everything related to that. In the second area, we've started investing in startups, so we support technology startups pretty much across Europe. And in the third area, we essentially help companies improve and develop their performance either prior to an investment or after an investment. And that can be in the what we call the real economy area. So, things like agri-food, food processing, industry, manufacturing, building materials, and so on and so forth. Or it can be in the technology sector. So it can either be tech startups or established tech firms which are scaling up.
Can you please elaborate a little on what does investment advisory or investment consulting include in itself? Like, what's its functions?
Yeah, great question. So very often when in a transaction, we have what we call the buy side or the sell side. So the sell side are the owners of an asset that either want to sell it or they want to attract an investment, which can be an equity investment or it can be a loan. And the buy side are the people who are essentially making the equity investment or offering a loan. And an investment advisor is typically called in to help the two sides uh, resolve the valuation of a situation and the future
Mhm.
development of an investment situation or an investment transaction. So, for example, if I'm working on behalf of an investment bank, I'm typically asked to evaluate a company, to look at its strategy, its competitiveness, its business processes, its profitability, its competitive situation, to see if over a period of time, typically 7 to 10 years, it can survive, it can prosper, it can meet the objectives of its business plan. If I'm contracted by the sell side, it's typically to prepare the business plan and the financial model and to attract fundraising, or it can be to negotiate the terms of a loan or an equity investment. So essentially, what we try to do is we try to work on behalf of both parties to make sure that all of the risks, all of the dimensions of an investment are clear, that there's a common understanding of risks and opportunities moving forward, and a common understanding of value and valuation in what the company is doing.
Yeah, very interesting. And how you started doing angel investing, like how the path took you to that way.
So from 1995 to 2010, my colleagues and I were working very intensively just on what we call standard consulting. So just working as consultants. And you recall there was a big financial crisis in 2008, a global financial crisis, which metastasized in 2010 into the beginning of the Greek financial crisis, which touched off the European financial crisis. So there were public debt crises in Greece, then Ireland, then
Mm.
Portugal, Spain, and a larger crisis was averted by very concerted EU efforts. At that time, my partners and I said that if we really want to make a difference, we can't just be plain consultants anymore. We have to actually enter the operational field and try to support early stage startups. And why do we want to do that? Well, because on the one hand, we're idealists. We feel that we're Europeans. We should try to support each other. We should try to support a new type of future, a future which is one a little bit younger, a little bit more entrepreneurial, more innovative. But on the other hand, we also had lots of ideas of our own, and we had lots of industry contacts. We had lots of, and we still have lots of professional skills. And it was interesting for us to see how we can merge all of this experience, all of these contacts, to try to help either new startups or even our own startups, our spin-offs, as we say. And that was
Mhm.
basically the decision we our decision initially was to support one startup, spin off, or social entrepreneurship case between 2010 and 2020. And we largely completed that. And in 2020, we extended our term until 2030. So we're still very much interested in supporting young, dynamic entrepreneurs who are out there to make a real change and try to do something better for the countries they live in and for the sectors that they're operating in.
Yeah, it seems like you are very hands-on investor. So you invest only in one startup for a year and you try to support them with all the resources you have. So that's very interesting strategy. Um, do you have any success story you would like to share with us or an interesting startup in your portfolio uh, that you would like to tell us about what they do, how they're doing?
Yeah, I've recently invested and decided to support a Cypriot entrepreneur. That took place in October, November of last year of 2022. The company is called
Mhm.
Nina Technologies. It focuses on developing intelligent ordering systems for hotels, restaurants, cafes, bars, but also other types of organizations in this space. And essentially, by mixing a blend of technology and software, we're able to accelerate the order cycle, improve the flow of data and the use of data for functions like loyalty, analytics, CRM. And we do this in such a way that we don't really take away from the job of a waiter or the human wait staff, but in fact we support them. So they have less kilometers to walk every evening. They can focus their time more on guest development and developing relations with customers. And at the same time, we provide owners with a very strong suite of analytics. And the win side, of course, is also for customers because they can wait a lot less, to get an order or to pay, and they can have then a superior experience at a lot of these hotels or restaurants. So I'm very proud of the progress that both the founder has made, and also I'm very, very interested by the sector that this startup is occupying.
Thank you, Philip, very much for telling us about you. And we'll be back for the second part to learn about what angels should do to support their startups to make sure they are successful. So, Philip, taking into consideration your experience, can you tell us how angel investors can support their portfolio startups to ensure they are becoming a successful ones?
Great question, and there's a lot of different answers. I think, the answer is really not about finance at all. The finance that an angel investor extends to a startup is mainly a show of confidence, and it should lead to greater discipline on the part of the startup. So, the finance is important. The cash amount is important, but what's really important is that it's a tangible sign that someone trusts the founder and the founding team to implement their plan. And in exchange, there has to be some sort of discipline. So sticking to the plan, communicating with the angel, evaluating, successes and failures, and so on and so forth. Different angels have different philosophies. Some angels say we're just going to extend the finance, and it's up to you, to grow the company, and we just want periodic progress reports, or we want to sit in on a quarterly board meeting or something like that. And that's one approach. It's a perfectly valid approach. In the case of my partners and I, we prefer to take a more active approach in supporting the startup, because we understand that we have skills and experience which can be useful at different stages of the growth cycle. We've lived through situations where we or our clients have ignored a lot of these situations and have, paid dearly for them. But at the same time, we have the industry contacts to actually help a startup make that much more progress towards its goal of, developing the minimum viable product, launching it, developing it, and then, trying to get to a stage of sales takeoff or of rapid sales growth. So, for example, some of the things we do are we help with governance and governance structures. It's very important to understand how decisions will be made, both as a small team of founders, but then also as you start allowing multiple external investors to come in and finance the company. The more external capital that comes in, the more oversight is required. And so you need to have typically a functioning board of directors. You need to have a form of communicating decisions. And you need to have the governance structure, which tells you how certain issues will be solved. So, for example, if a new investor comes and wants to buy 100% of equity, how will the decision be made? If one of the founders wants to leave the team, what happens to the shareholding? Who has the right of first refusal or the right of first access on the shareholding? We pay a lot of attention to the legal contracts and the liability which may be embedded in the product or service which is being offered. And again, very often most founders are just so happy to create, they might not consider what are some of the liability issues they may face if a service goes wrong or if a product fails, or something like that takes place. In more mundane areas, we serve as a sounding board. We serve as a reality check. Um, we try to encourage and support the founders wherever possible. It's very lonely being an entrepreneur. There's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. There are many times when you stay awake at night, unable to sleep because you're not sure if you can, do payroll, or you're confronted with, major decisions. So I think one of the main benefits we bring is the benefit of experience, of being a friendly resource to rely on in this type of context. Um, but it comes back to what I said originally. I think the main thing that we offer is we offer trust and we offer support, and I think that's very important today, given the way the world is going.
Yeah, taking into consideration your background, you're actually offering a lot. And I believe that's a really win situation for a founder who is like product obsessed, and they don't want to deal with other stuff, kind of
Yeah.
other stuff, which eventually becomes like really important stuff.
Yes, you're right. You're exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, from your background, we learned that you invested and worked with in different countries.
Yeah.
How one should start investing outside of their borders. It has different aspects like mental, psychological, and also physical aspect. Like people want to deal with the people they met in real life, and
Mm.
it creates a lot of difficulties. But from your experience, like how should someone who is willing to seek opportunities outside of their markets start doing that?
Great question. I guess the easy answer is you have to take nothing for granted, because what you consider as being a normal operating situation in your home country is probably going to be very, very different in another country. So, for example, I live in Cyprus, which is an EU member state, but right now I'm investing in Germany, which is another EU member state. The tax system, the legal system, the government system in Germany, the consumers in Germany are totally different. And so
Mm.
if you're going to make assumptions that everything is the same or everything is equivalent, very probably you're going to you will be faced with disappointment at some point early on. So I would say the first point is you've got to prepare. You have to get online, look up the tax system, try to get briefed a little bit on the legal system, on some of the challenges, say, of opening a bank account, maintaining a bank account, complying with local regulations on things like everything from anti-money laundering to know your customer requirements. If you're dependent on financing in that country, you have to understand what the financiers are looking for and what conditionality they're going to place on the investment. You obviously need to look at the market, and not just at the market in theoretical terms, but in transaction terms. So, for example, if I want to sell an electric motorcycle in Germany, I need to understand exactly how that transaction is going to take place, starting with what is my liability for the motorcycle? Am I going to sell it directly or through a distributor? Who is responsible for the after sales service and the warranty terms? If something on the motorcycle breaks, who's going to replace it? Who's going to maintain it? And how much will that cost? And so on and so forth. So you just can't take things for granted. You really have to investigate them to the maximum extent possible. And part of this process also is getting feedback from multiple sources. I would say never trust a single source of information.
Mm.
Try to cross-check what that source is telling you,
Yeah.
at least one or two other sources. And there's Murphy's law, right, which says that whatever can go wrong will go wrong. And I have something called Ammerman's law, which is simply that everything will go wrong. It's not to say I'm a pessimist. It's just to say that for every decision you make, it's a good idea to have weighed that decision carefully and to have a plan A, a plan B, a plan C for as many of these things as you can. Um, so that's just like a very brief intro. Of course, at the end of the
Hmm.
day, you have to sink or swim, right? You've got to either put on your bathing suit and dive into the water and start trying to invest in that country, or you should not if you're not confident. But by all means, don't do things because of pressure. Do not make decisions because of fear of missing out. Don't make decisions because there might be a very hot sector or a hot prospect or something like that. The economy is cyclical, so it goes in cycles, and so does technology, and so do investment opportunities. And what you miss today, that might be an opportunity tomorrow. There will almost certainly be an opportunity tomorrow.
And Philip, how did you source the deals? Like how you find those opportunities?
Great question. So for there's like there are multiple ways of answering this question. Just to give you an example, right now on LinkedIn, I'm getting about one pitch a day, sometimes two pitches per day, and these are unsolicited. These are people who, for whatever reason, see my profile, they think I might be able to help, so they contact me and they send me their pitch. I participate in a lot of different organizations, like entrepreneurship competitions, pitching competitions, and things like that. So that's a second, great source of ideas. I work with universities, and there's some, great research which can be commercialized and really has great potential. But at the end of the day, I found most interestingly that it's other people's introductions and other people's recommendations which are really, really important. So if I take the past 3 investments I've made, they have all come to me through introductions by other friends who are either investing or looking at investing in the same startup. So it's important to have good friends.
Interesting. Yeah, agree. And one last question for this part. Are there any regions or industries that you find particularly promising for investment opportunities?
That is a great question. Yes, so I think that there are many sectors of the economy which are today managed, and to make this statement, you basically have to have consulted on a large number of companies, but there are many companies which are managed today in the same way, with the same economic model as they fundamentally were managed 40 or 50 years ago, so pre-internet. So if you look at a lot of professional services like the legal sector, the accounting sector, if you look at the tourism sector, particularly the hotel sector, if you look at restaurants in Horeca, for a lot of these sectors, the full impact of digital transformation and technology has not yet hit. So let me give you an example. I'm a member of probably 8 hotel loyalty clubs: Hilton, Radisson, Starwood, which is now Marriott, and I tend to stay at the same hotels. Have I ever gotten, an offer from one of those hotels? No, which is quite strange. I guess despite the loyalty program, they think that they can just rely on my business without really having to fight for it. But today in the tech world, there's so many solutions we can have for better customer relationships, for better customer analytics, for things like yield management, for trying to get a better average daily rate, and so on and so forth. And it's strange that for many organizations, they are not really using this functionality, even if they already have it on their hotel booking engine or on their central reservation system. So I find it fascinating that on the one hand, there's vast segments of the economy which are working, as I said, largely in the same way as they were 40 or 50 years ago. But then on top of that, look at the impact that AI and artificial intelligence, virtual reality, machine learning, Internet of Things, look at the impact that these things are going to have on these sectors. I mean, if you take the accounting sector, I estimate that 90% of effort in an average accountancy is essentially expenditure accounting, right? So your client gives you all of their expenditure, and as an accountant, it's your task to make sure it's put in the right category so the government can get its tax allocation. All of that will be automated. It can already be automated now with bank account reconciliation and everything. And in the future, it will it's just going to be a fact. We will not have to do this very boring, repetitive work, which also has a lot of mistakes in it. So if I'm an accountant, I would be thinking right now, wow, in 5 years, within 5 years, the very operating fabric of my sector is going to change. How am I going to respond to that? If I'm a hotel owner, right, you go to the average hotel website, what do you see? You see two-dimensional photos. Sometimes you see a video or a drone, a very short clip. Sometimes you see one of these 360-degree photos, which has been stitched together. But there's so many more ways of promoting a hotel today, including virtual or augmented reality. And when is the last time you saw, like, let's say a walkthrough of the lunch buffet of a hotel, right? And you've got your goggles or other means of interaction, and you can look at one item on the menu. It can tell you the calories. It can tell you what the product is. It can tell you if there are any allergens. This is something so totally basic that I'm just wondering why it hasn't been implemented. Imagine if you're a city and you want to do, like, I don't know, routes of Byzantine churches, because you have like maybe 3 or 4 Byzantine churches within your city limits. Well, augmented reality is an amazing way to do that, because people who come up in front of the church, they can not only be guided to the church, but when they're in the church, when they're outside the church, you can give them a complete interactive guide, which is going to be vastly superior, typically, to what the information they can get themselves. So there's all this technology. It's both very existing, stable technology. It's also emerging technology, but for some reason, it's not being used. So, for instance, I'm personally very interested in the area of VR and AR for the hotel sector. I would love to invest a startup in that space. And there are a lot of other areas like this, which I just see that are in dire need of transformation, but where, for whatever reason, things are going very slowly.
Yeah, so once we have this kind of startups, I will let you know.
Deal.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much, Philip, for your inputs. And yeah, we'll be back for the third part. So, Philip, we are back for the third part where we ask 3 very quick questions. So we
Okay.
expect short answers and the ones that are not that well thought through. So the first one is, what is the most rewarding thing for you in angel investing?
Believing in young people.
Oh, very precise. What would you advise someone who is just starting angel investing?
Never invest more than you're prepared to lose, and don't invest for money.
What is the primary factor for you when you look at the startup and you're evaluating it? What's the one most important thing you look at?
It's actually tied, and sorry about that, but the first most important is the team and the quality of the team,
Mm-hmm.
and the second is the social or the business utility of the solution.
Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, Philip. This has been really interesting and useful conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm really impressed by Armenia and by the work that Bana is doing. And really, congratulations. There's some great startups here.
Hope you enjoyed this episode and found it helpful. Please subscribe to our podcast to keep up with our future episodes. Join our Telegram channel, where we share information on our episodes, meetups, events, and webinars with angel investors, as well as relevant materials on the topic. If you have a question, feel free to contact me on LinkedIn. Help spread the word about angel investing by sharing this video with your network. You might be the one who inspires the next successful angel investor. It's time to grow your wings. See you soon.